Today I'm going to build a drawer. It's going to be a very simple drawer. It's not going to have any fancy joints with it. Now you could go out and you could buy a locking bit for a router. You can buy a dovetail jig. You can buy box joint jigs. You can buy just about anything to make a drawer. The problem is it's going to take you just as long to set those jigs up or set up your router than it would be to make the whole drawer. You're not going to get anything any stronger than the way I'm going to show you. There'll be some people who will argue, well, you have to use a box joint jig, or you're going to have to use a dovetail jig in order to get something that looks decent. Well, that just isn't so. If you want something that looks decent, you're going to have to do hand-cut dovetails, and that's not the type of work that I'm going to be showing you how to do today. Maybe in another video. However, those type of dovetail joints are really only done if you are trying to show off your craftsmanship on some heirloom piece of furniture, not for a kitchen cabinet, a bathroom cabinet, you know, the type of basic utility drawers that most people are looking to build. Again, you can spend all your money if you want on the locking jigs and the dovetail jigs, but you're not going to get anything better than the simple way that I'm going to show you. What I'm going to be using is just scrap wood. Okay, just a bunch of scrap wood that I have sitting around the shop. I'm not going to be making any specific size, just whatever it comes out to. As far as the dovetail jig and the locking jig or the locking bit for the router, just remember, and if you have a lot of money, then be my guest and spend it. Otherwise, stick around. Okay, first thing I've done is I've cut two 3/4 inch dados at the end of these boards, and that's going to accept a piece of 3/4 inch wood like that. Now I use the dado blade, but you can do this with multiple passes of a table saw. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rip this piece of plywood down to the same width as the sides are going to be. Alright, so I have this one ripped down. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a dado, a little groove down the bottom of both of my side panels, and that will accept the piece of plywood that I'm going to cut. So I'll take that over to the saw, cut my dado. Okay, I've done the dados. I took them in about a ½ inch because the drawer is heavy, so you want to have some beefy wood on this side in order to hold it, you know, to hold it so it doesn't break off. Anyhow, so I've got my 3/4 inch in the back, and I've got the 1/4 inch running down the middle, and that will be where the drawer sits, or where the bottom of the drawer sits. So let me go back to the saw and cut another piece of wood. What I've done is, without changing the fence on the saw, I went and I cut, this is going to be the back of the drawer. I cut the dado in here so that everything is now the same. This and the sides are all the same width, and they all have the same groove going across the bottom edge of them. One other thing I should point out, if you're doing multiple drawers, it's a lot quicker to take one long piece of wood, all right, and just put the dado all the way down it. Now again, you can do this with a dado blade on your table saw. You can do it with just the blade on the table saw by moving it over a little each time. If you have a router, you can do it with a 1/4 inch straight bit. You can cut the groove in it. However you get it in, it doesn't matter. But to avoid setup time, it's better to do as many pieces as you can at the same time. Now I happen to have two table saws, so I set one up just for the dado blade, and I set the other one up for cutting the wood to length. So the next thing I'm going to do, now I'm doing this, if you were building an actual drawer, you would already know what size drawer you want. But I'm doing this because I have a piece of plywood, and I don't want to cut this piece of plywood up anymore than I have to. So, remember, fool and their money or some party. There's no telling when you're going to need a piece of plywood. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the plywood in, all right, and I'm going to figure out how long I have to have it. All right. So that'll tell me how long I have to have it. Push that right into the groove in the back, and that'll tell me how long my plywood has to be. And up here, it's going to have to be another 3/4 inch, 3/4 inch for the front of the cabinet to fit into. So you have to take that in consideration when you're cutting the front of the cabinet. But let me cut that, and then I'll show you what I mean after I start putting it together. Let me show you how I'm assembling it. I'm going to take the back, we'll slide it into the dado, like such. Put the other one in. Like so. Take the plywood, slide it in from the front, slide it into the groove, all the way to the back and into the groove in the back. Got it assembled. Last thing I'm going to do, and again, if you were making drawers, you would already know how long they were going to be, but since this was just slapped together, I really didn't know how long it was going to end up being. So I'll just measure from here to there on both sides, and I'll cut this thing flush, and then I'll show you what else we do. All right, so the box would be assembled. Assembled would look something like this. This part in the back keeps it from moving. It'll be nailed 2 or 3 times along the edge. Again, the front gets nailed a couple times. The bottom just sits in the groove. You don't have to nail it at all. The only thing you would do when you're finishing it up is you take a piece of wood, whatever your cupboards are made out of, you put that on the front. And usually the drawer itself is made shorter than the opening it's going in, and the drawer front is made to cover up that space between the drawer and the cabinet itself. So you just take a piece of wood, good wood, attach it to the front, and that would be your drawer. Figure it probably takes, well, since I had to keep starting and stopping to do this, this drawer would take somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 minutes to build. Again, if you're doing a bunch of drawers the same size, you cut everything that you can, so you don't have to keep going back. Oh, the one thing I would say though is that when you're cutting the back grooves, all right, you already have your groove in the bottom. You're cutting the backs. Just remember, there's a right and there's a left, so you don't want to just go and cut this dado on both sides without making sure that the groove is at the bottom. Right? You have a left and a right side, so just keep that in mind when you're doing it. And you know, this as I said, this is a simple drawer. It'll serve you for many years without any problems whatsoever, and it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg to build something like this. You don't have to have any special equipment. You don't have to have any special knowledge. You can throw them together in no time at all. Hope this helps.